Okay, Dad, used car prices are falling, and that means a lot of folks are going to be looking at buying a used car now or in the near future. You were a car dealer for 40 plus years, and you're going to run us through 5 red flags to look out for on a CarFax. You going to walk us through it?
Absolutely. It'll be my pleasure.
All right, so we found 2 vehicles on the CarEdge car search. The first one, Dad, is a 2016 Ford F-150 Super Cab. And the moment you laid your eyes on this CarFax, you had some questions, the first of which was...
Well, I noticed that the car was originally sold on 5/17, or actually 4/25, 2016, because that's when the registration was issued. And then the first service that's recorded on CarFax is 3 years and 30,484 miles later. So what I don't know is if there had been any services done to this vehicle in the first 30,484 miles. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I don't know. Was the oil ever changed? Is there sludge in the engine instead of oil in the engine because perhaps the oil had never been changed, or perhaps it had never been brought in for the 7,500 mile service, the 15,000 mile service, the 20, So I don't know what the service history was. So to me, that's the first red flag. What happened in those first 30,485 miles?
Now, interesting. Go ahead. Keep going. You're on a roll.
Yeah, and then what I noticed is, okay, obviously, Lawley Ford Kia traded it, okay, and they offered it for sale. So they put it out on their lot on May 24th, 2019. So I'm just trying to see some history with the car. And it was serviced by them on 6/18/2019. Now, you would think that service should have happened prior to them putting it out for sale, not after they put it out for sale, okay?
Yep.
Then, less than a month later, they had to service it again, okay? And then they sold the vehicle, finally, in February of 2020. So it sat on their lot for, 6, 7, 8 months, almost 8 months. Now, here's an interesting point. They sell it on 2/8/2020. 12 days later, they bring it back in for service, okay? And it's got 30,487. It's only got 3 miles on it. Well, if they sold it 12 days earlier, how could it only have 3 more miles on it? And then they serviced it again 5 days later. Okay. It's got 3 more miles on it this time.
Yep.
So you got to start saying to yourself, what was wrong with this vehicle that from the time they got it to the time they sold it, they had to have it in their shop 4 times?
Pops, we are super excited. CarEdge Insurance. What is it? What do we need to know?
It's all your insurance needs in one place. Easy, simple, fast. Just give us some information. You get your quotes.
CarEdge.com/insurance. So 3 red flags that you hit on so far. First red flag, pretty obvious one, where's the service history? Second red flag is the fact that the vehicle sat for 8 months.
Yes.
We preach it all the time. The longer a vehicle sits on a dealer's lot, the more likely they are to negotiate on it. So that's generally a good thing for your negotiability on a vehicle. That being said, it is a red flag on a CarFax where you don't have service history. Red flag number 3, Dad, is 4 services in that short of a time period. That's definitely a red flag.
Well, there must have been something wrong with the car. Okay, now we get into the second owner, okay? And the second owner, obviously didn't drive it a lot. He bought it in February. He brought it back in September with 3,000 more miles on it for it to be serviced again. And then 4 months later, he brings it back with 2,500 more miles on it to be serviced again. Okay, same dealership. He keeps taking it back to the same dealership.
They love this customer.
Yes. Then, before he could get it serviced again, he gets in an accident. Okay. Now, having an accident's not necessarily a red flag, and it was the damage to the right rear. It might not have been that bad. But then it has it serviced after it comes out of the body shop. He's still only got 37,000 miles on it. And then he brought it back the following month for a manufacturer recall, which is fine. And then he brought it back 3,000 miles, and 2 months later for another service. And then 1,900 miles later, he brings it in for another service. But that is like a month after the previous service. Then he managed to put 2,000 miles on it before he needed to have it serviced again, at which point he said, I want out of this vehicle, and he traded it in. Okay, because all of a sudden it's offered for sale again. Well, if you're thinking about buying this truck and you look at this CarFax history report, the only thing you can discern is that it had issues, and lots of them, in only 44,000 miles. No truck should need. We know of 11 recorded services, and we don't know of any recorded services in the first 30,000 miles. So why should a truck or any other vehicle need 11 services in 14,000 miles? There have got to be serious issues that nobody seems to be able to fix.
Red flag number 4, uncharacteristic behavior in the service history or just in the CarFax history in general. That's red flag number 4. Now, Dad, I found another vehicle. This is another F-150, but this one is a 2007, so a bit older, obviously, Dad.
Yes.
And a red flag that jumps off the page at an even more significant magnitudes of scale. This vehicle, Dad, was sold in February of 2007. There is not a single reference of service until it was serviced in October of 2011 with 100,000 miles on it. Not only do you stay away from this car in perpetuity, you don't even think about it. You just don't even think, because at 100,000 miles, absolutely no service. And you preach 2 things, Dad, when it comes to used cars. Pre-purchase inspection if you're going to buy one. And if you have a used car to sell, have your service history, your service records, because it actually makes the vehicle, the trade-in, more valuable.
Yes, if service history will make your trade worth more money to a dealer, because that way they can share with the next customer how frequently you had serviced the vehicle and what type of services you had done. But to see no services on a vehicle in the first 100,000 miles, I mean, who knows what had been done to that car? Now, my suspicion is there had to be a few oil changes, because it probably wouldn't have made it to 100,000 miles. But that is a huge red flag. We didn't go through the rest of that particular CarFax, but you see something like that as a used car manager or an appraiser, the first thing you're doing is you're subtracting a tremendous amount from your appraisal, because you have no idea what that can of worms you might open will be when you take it into your shop to have service performed, to have a vehicle state inspection done, and then during that, things they might uncover because there's no service history to speak of. And I'm telling you, you are thousands behind book, because, and when I say behind book, what I mean by that is what the published wholesale values are for a vehicle. Yep. You would be thousands behind that value, because in an appraiser's mind, you're thinking, well, there's going to be thousands of dollars of work that's going to need to be done in a situation like this.
So, Pops, we managed to get to 4 CarFax red flags. There's got to be a 5th one out there. I mean, accidents, we're not saying those are a red flag. Again, you just have to make sure you get the pre-purchase inspection done. And to recap, we said if there's no service history, that's obviously a red flag. If there's a gap between the amount of time that it took to sell a vehicle, that's a bit of a red flag. If there's a ton of services after the sale of a vehicle, that is a red flag. And if there's kind of incoherent, if you can't explain what the heck's going on in the Carfax, it's a bit of a red flag. Do you have a fifth one for us, Pops? Anything that comes to mind?
You just want to look to make sure that all the recalls are done, and you can check on Carfax, just because we saw in the first one that, you know, one of the 11 recorded services was that they had to bring it back to actually do a manufacturer recall on the vehicle. So those are things to look for. And you have to remember that a Carfax is only as good as the information that gets inputted into systems. Obviously, at Logley, Ford, Kia, anytime they brought a vehicle into service, they shared that information with Carfax. There are many dealers, and many independent dealers as well, and mechanics as well, that don't share that information with Carfax. So Carfax isn't the end-all, be-all, but you can glean a lot of important information from looking at a Carfax.
Love it. Thank you as always, Pops.
My pleasure, Handsome. Thank you.